A struggling single dad named Jake Carter just got off his graveyard shift at a rundown gas station. His fingers are cracked, his boots leak, and he's got exactly $17.43 in his checking account. He's holding his 6-year-old daughter Lily's hand, walking her home in the dark because they can't afford a babysitter. Lily stops, points to a shadow by the dumpster. "Daddy, is that lady dying?" Jake turns. His breath catches. A young black woman is curled up on the freezing pavement, her clothes soaked through, clutching two crying babies swaddled in grocery bags. Their lips are turning blue. No jacket, no food. People pass by. Nobody helps. Jake stands there, torn between survival and his soul. He should walk away. He's barely feeding Lily. He's a single dad with nothing left to give. But he steps forward, picks up the babies first, then the mother. And that one decision, it sparks a chain of events involving a viral video, a billionaire CEO, and a secret that will flip Jake's world upside down. He had nothing, but he gave everything. And what he got back, no one saw coming. Jake Carter never imagined that rock bottom would feel so numb. Not just from the cold biting through his threadbare jacket, but from the weight of everything life had taken from him in the past year. A construction accident had shattered his leg, and with it, his ability to work full-time. His wife, gone, left a note, said she couldn't do the broken life. That was 8 months ago. Since then, it had just been Jake and his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. The city never cared, neither did his employer. No one noticed when Jake limped out of his overnight shift at the Shell gas station in Newark at 5:30 a.m., holding his daughter's tiny hand. He couldn't afford childcare, so she slept in the back room during his shift with a space heater and a blanket that smelled like oil and dreams long gone. The wind that morning was brutal, cutting straight through skin and soul. Jake had just enough in his account to buy eggs and a loaf of bread for the week. His plan was simple: get home, get Lily fed, maybe sleep 3 hours before heading out to look for side work. It was all about survival. But that plan ended when Lily stopped walking. "Daddy," she whispered, tugging at his arm. "Is that lady okay?" Jake followed her gaze. At first he thought it was trash piled beside the dumpster. But then he saw it. A woman, young, soaked, her skin pale. She was barely conscious, slumped against a brick wall, her arms wrapped tight around two crying infants bundled in plastic grocery bags like makeshift blankets. Jake looked around. Cars drove by. A jogger passed and stared straight ahead. A man sipping coffee on his stoop turned away. "Come on, baby," he told Lily. "Don't stare." But he didn't move. His feet were frozen in place, not from the snow beneath them, but the scene in front of him. The babies weren't just crying. They were wailing, faces red, fists clenched in panic. The woman's eyes flickered open and locked onto Jake's. She didn't speak, just mouthed two words. "Help, please." Every part of him screamed, "Don't do it. You can't afford this. You're broke, alone, struggling. What if she's dangerous? What if this is a setup?" But then Lily let go of his hand and walked toward the babies. Jake's heart dropped. "Lily, wait!" She knelt beside the infants and covered one with her own little scarf. "They're cold, Daddy." Jake rushed over. The woman flinched as he crouched beside her. "Hey," he said gently, putting a hand on her shoulder. "You okay?" She tried to nod, but her body trembled too hard. She hadn't eaten, she was wet, and her lips were turning blue. Jake picked up one baby, then the other. They were light, too light, malnourished. Without another thought, he hoisted the woman up over his shoulder like a sack of laundry. "Come on," he muttered, more to himself than her. "Let's get you warm." He didn't know what he was doing. He didn't have a plan, but he couldn't walk away. His one-bedroom apartment was a 5-block walk. No elevator. 3rd floor. The stairs creaked as he carried all 3 of them up like some kind of insane Christmas miracle gone rogue. He laid the woman down on the couch, cranked up the old space heater, and wrapped her in blankets. Lily brought the babies warm towels from the dryer. They didn't have diapers or formula, but Jake poured warm water into 2 bottles and mashed up the only banana left in the fridge. The woman stirred. Where am I?" "You're safe," Jake said, kneeling beside her. "Name's Jake. This is Lily. She looked at him like he was from another planet. Why did you help me? He shrugged. Why not? Tears formed in her eyes. Everyone else walked past, even the cops. I thought we were going to die out there. What's your name? He asked softly. Marissa. She told him pieces between gulps of warm water and exhausted sobs. She had been evicted 2 weeks ago. No family. The twins' father had vanished after their birth. She tried every shelter, every hotline, nothing. Last night, she finally gave up, found that alley, thought it would be the end. Jake's jaw clenched. He wanted to be mad at the world, but all he could do was nod. That night, he let her sleep on the couch while he and Lily shared the bed. The babies cried every few hours, and Jake got up each time to help warm bottles or rock them gently with calloused hands that once held tools, now holding fragile life. The next morning, he called out of work, risking his job, and went to the corner clinic for help. They gave him formula samples and food vouchers. Still, it wasn't enough. So Jake did something he never thought he would. He told their story. He took out his cracked phone and made a short video, standing in the hallway of his building. My name is Jake Carter. I'm a single dad. I've got $17 to my name and a kid I'd die for. This morning I found a mother and her twins freezing to death in an alley. I brought them home. I don't want money. I just want someone to see them, to help them. We're better than this. We have to be. He posted it, then turned off his phone and went back to changing a diaper for the first time in his life. By evening, the post had gone viral. Over 2.3 million views. Celebrities shared it. Journalists started calling. Donations began flooding in. And then came a call that Jake ignored, until Lily picked up. Hi, is this Jake Carter's phone? The man asked. Lily passed it to Jake. Daddy, it's some fancy-sounding guy. Jake hesitated. Yeah? This is Grant Sterling, Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Motors. I saw your video. I'd like to meet you. Tomorrow. I'll send a car. Jake laughed out loud. Yeah, sure. And I'm Santa Claus. But the next morning, a black Cadillac Escalade showed up at his building. Jake Carter sat on the hospital bed, hand-wrapped, ribs bandaged, a swollen eye nearly shut. But all he could think about was Lily, safe in the next room, curled up in a chair with Marissa, the twins asleep in her arms. Jerome had been arrested. Police had enough to hold him: assault, breaking and entering, and violating multiple restraining orders. But the court case would take weeks, maybe months. And with the media now locked onto the story, every part of Jake's life was exposed. The next morning, Jake and Marissa stood in front of Judge Karen Ellison in Newark Family Court. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but reporters waited outside like sharks. Grant Sterling's lawyers had pulled every string to ensure maximum protection for Marissa and the twins. Still, Jake knew one mistake, and it could all fall apart. Jerome sat in a prison-issued suit, flanked by his lawyer, smug, calm, as if none of this mattered. The judge looked over the files. Miss Marissa Jennings, do you wish to proceed with full custody and request a permanent protective order? Marissa stood, her voice shaking. Yes, Your Honor. I've feared this man for 3 years. I have medical records, police reports, and now, Jake Carter's testimony. He saved my life, and my children's. Jake's heart pounded as he was called to the stand. Mr. Carter, the judge said, you've known Miss Jennings for how long? Jake cleared his throat. A few weeks. I found her and the twins outside a dumpster, half frozen. I didn't know her name, but I knew no one else was going to help. So I did. And you took them into your home? Yes, ma'am. My daughter and I, we didn't have much, but we had enough to share. The judge studied him. And why did you get involved in a situation that wasn't your responsibility? Jake looked toward Lily, who peeked in through the courtroom door. Then to Marissa. Because sometimes being a father doesn't stop at your own kids. The courtroom went silent. Even Jerome looked rattled. By the end of the hearing, the judge ruled in Marissa's favor. Full custody, permanent restraining order. The courtroom burst into hushed relief. As Jake stood to leave, Marissa stopped him in the hallway. I don't know how to thank you, she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. Jake shrugged. You already did. When you stayed. Then she reached into her purse and handed him a small envelope. What's this? He asked. Open it when you're home. Back at the new apartment, Jake sat on the bed and opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten. Dear Jake, I used to believe that people like you didn't exist anymore. But you saved me, my babies, and you never once asked for anything in return. So I talked to Grant Sterling, and I made a choice. He wants to fund something new, a shelter for single parents, a place for families like ours. And he wants you to run it. The job's yours. Salary, benefits, staff. You'd be in charge of giving people what you gave us, hope. Marissa Jake stared at the paper. His vision blurred. Lily walked in, holding one of the twins. Daddy, are you crying? He smiled and wiped his face. Nah, baby, just dreaming while awake. Weeks passed, then months. The shelter opened with media fanfare. The Carter Center for Families stood tall in downtown Newark, a converted community building with cribs, warm food, and therapy services. Jake ran it like his life depended on it. Because it did. He showed up early, stayed late, held babies, made calls, sat with scared moms and exhausted dads, and every night he tucked Lily into bed in their new home right above the shelter. Sometimes he'd see Marissa walk by with the twins, healthy now, giggling and chasing Lily around the halls. They weren't just friends. They were something else. Family. 1 year later, at the shelter's first annual fundraiser gala, Jake stood on a small stage, suit slightly too tight, fingers gripping the mic. The room was packed. Donors, families, media, and Grant Sterling front row center. Jake took a deep breath. I used to think my story was about being a single dad, about survival. But it's not. It's about what happens when you stop surviving and start lifting others. He looked at Lily, sitting next to Marissa and the twins. Because sometimes the people you save turn out to be the ones who save you. The audience rose in a standing ovation. Grant wiped a tear. Marissa clapped so hard her hands turned red. And Jake, he just smiled, because for the first time in his life, he wasn't alone.